Good almost afternoon, everyone. My name is Wasim, and so this is more of a personal, quick talk about how I got to R. Just a little bit of background. When I was in primary school, started programming. I loved games, and I also loved making things. And so naturally, the first thing I tried to do is make games. And that's how I got into programming. So I went to my favorite search engine at the time, which I don't know if you still remember this, but Alta Vista, and I typed in how to make games, and I found the fortunately named Game Maker. And it had a GUI, and you could create these game objects and program logic into them, and it was really programming in kind of a special way. And eventually my cousin introduced me to something a bit more powerful, a more powerful tool based on the language BASIC. It's called Dark Basic, and it had this retro cool editor. And I think the top right, those 1 and 2 were actually like fixed tabs. You only had 2 tabs that you could ever use, and that's how you access them. Eventually I got into dabbling with some more serious languages, C++ a little bit. In high school they taught me Java, and eventually I settled on Python for a while. And I think the reason that I hopped so much from one to the other is because I never quite felt comfortable with how it felt to code in each of these languages. I never quite liked how it felt to translate my thoughts into code and into typing, until Python. And so with Python, I learned to read and write code that I thought was beautiful in a way. It wasn't just something for a machine anymore. There's this poem which you should check out if you haven't. These are the first 3 lines of it, called The Zen of Python. It's quite funny. And it kind of describes how you would write what they call Pythonic code. And so these are the first 3 lines. So beautiful is better than ugly. Explicit is better than implicit. Simple is better than complex. But the idea is that as a young programmer, this is the first time I realized that it's important how code looks, not just what it does. And Python introduced me to that. More recently, there was a more interesting idea about how code looks that I came across. And this painting, I think, captures it perfectly. So this painting, it's a famous painting by a French artist, and the bottom there translates to English. It translates to, "This is not a pipe." And so if you've never seen this before, you might be thinking, this guy's crazy. Like, that's a pipe? Like, I know what a pipe is. But the idea is, can you pack that with tobacco and smoke it? No, it's an image. Like, it's showing on a slideshow. It's a representation of a pipe. It's not the pipe itself. And so at this point, you might be wondering, like, so what the hell does this have to do with R? Well, just as this is a representation of a pipe, I think this is a representation of an idea. It's not the idea itself. It's code. It's how we translate the idea into something that's actionable. And so I think that when we code, there's a constant struggle. We're constantly struggling between translating from our ideas and into code and into representations of those ideas back and forth. And I think when we have a good representation of our ideas, when the code is a good representation of our ideas, it flows easily. But when it's not a good representation, it's a constant cost, a price that we have to pay every time. And I want to show you by example why I'm so fascinated with R. So when I read this, I don't think df percent greater than percent. What I read is, okay, I want to take df and do something to it. Okay, maybe I'll take df and then filter rows where x is less than 3, then arrange rows by x, then select column x. And very easily I've gone from code, a representation of ideas, to English. And I can show this to anybody and they would understand it if they understand English. Oh, I might want to add some punctuation if I'm being a bit pedantic in any case. And so the idea is that this is very close to how I think. And it's very close to how I would type it. And there's almost no cost that I have to pay to translate between those. And I think this is just a beautiful representation of ideas. And I think it's beautiful because it's been carefully designed and functions have been carefully named, keeping in mind one important principle. And that's that code represents the ideas of people. And by focusing on the people and minimizing the cost of translating back and forth between ideas and representations, the designers of these programs, or of this language, have managed to help us free our minds of all this constant cost and translation, and to focus instead on what's really important, the ideas themselves. It allows us to fall into the so-called pit of success. And I think the R community gets this principle better than any other community I've come across. And that's why I arrived at R. Thank you.